Roth, Germany was a small and quiet rural town, not unlike many other European towns of the early 20th century. In Roth, like elsewhere, Jews and non-Jews lived, worked, played, and during World War I, even fought alongside each other. With the rise of the Nazi Party, life began to change at Roth. It was a change that would be repeated in towns like Roth all over Nazi-occupied Europe.
I, as a child, played more with Gentile children than these Jewish children.
Nazi anti-Semitism to every city and town in Germany and Austria, including Roth. Trude Meyer, a survivor from Fronhausen, a neighboring village, offers an account of what happened in her town and what likely happened in Roth.
We had to use the name Sarah was our regular name, and the man had to use the name Israel. Whenever, whatever we wrote, we had to go someplace, our picture was taken, like a passport picture, ID, but they took it from a certain angle, all these things started to happen to us. And then they gave us the Judenstern to wear, the Star of David. We had to wear it on our outside clothes at all time. When we went on the street, we had to wear it. And when we walked on the street, we were not supposed to walk with the public on the sidewalk. We had to get off that sidewalk and walk near the sidewalk. The gutter, so to say. There was the gutter, yeah.
Increasingly, Jews were restricted from owning property and were eventually transported to slave labor camps or ghettos in Poland. No Jew from Roth who was deported to a ghetto survived.
About the year 1941, beginning of the year 1941, we had to take other Jewish people in from a neighboring town which had an ammunition factory. And the Jews had to leave their little town, and they had to leave everything behind, only what they also could carry. But we had to take these people in, and they had to live with us.
Jews went from performing slave labor to outright annihilation in the Nazi killing centers. Martha Bescher comes from Jospa, a village near Roth. She was with Ilse Hochster from Roth in the Siemens slave labor camp, as well as the killing centers at Auschwitz-Birkenau.
So first of all, you didn't feel like a human being anymore. We came together to Auschwitz, but if you didn't live the first few weeks, if you survived, I guess then you survived, because that's the only thing that happened to me.
The killing centers were the last step in the Nazi plan to rid the world of Jews and
person who was just interviewed.
Of the 31 Jews in Roth before the start of World War II, only 11 would survive. Though the Nazis eventually lost the war, anti-Semitism was never completely eradicated.
Greetings and welcome, everyone. I am honored that Mr. Schleuder, the German Consul General, and my old friend Rabbi Marvin Goodman are here with us. I was raised in a close-knit family which was influenced by both German and Jewish culture, religious observance, and tradition. My grandmother on my father's side lived with us until I was 20 years old, and although she knew English, speaking German to her was a requirement. I remember hearing the sounds of opera and Omi singing in German while playing on the piano. We ate wonderful baked foods in the German tradition and always celebrated the Sabbath and Jewish holidays together. When I was growing up, my parents, Hermann and Trude, chose not to expose me and my brother Fred to discussions about the Holocaust or the impact it had on our family. They mainly shared stories about their childhood in Germany. I knew that my observant father left Hamburg at around 17 years old and lived in Shanghai, China with his family for 9 years. Emigrating ultimately saved their lives. Also, I knew that my mom came from a small town and was still corresponding with close friends there. That small town was the rural village of Fronhausen. Roth is the neighboring village 2 miles away, and both are located about 1 hour north of Frankfurt. Since our first visit back in 1984, many details and stories have emerged about the past. My ancestors had resided in Fronhausen since the 1700s. Hermann Lowenstein, my grandfather, was a very observant man and carried on the family tradition of being a kosher butcher. They were well respected, and even the non-Jewish townspeople patronized the business. On the Sabbath, my mother and her 3 siblings accompanied their father to the train station, where he walked a path along the tracks to the Synagogue Roth. On Sunday mornings, the children would ride their bicycles to Roth, joining others from the area for religious school. Due to the lack of heat in the synagogue, class was actually held in the Higster house, the ancestors of Derek Wetmore. Hermann Higster was extremely religious, but the pious teacher who came from the nearby big city of Marburg insisted on supplying his own kosher meals. The Lowenstein front door was always open. In the courtyard, one could find a variety of farm animals moving about, including a house, a horse, and a cow, and young Trude was not especially fond of the animals. My grandmother, Johanna, welcomed the stranger or the beggar passing through, ensuring they received something to eat along with a donation. Mr. Higster is remembered for peddling his goods in Fronhausen while pulling a wagon pulled by a St. Bernard. My grandmother practiced the custom of going to the mikveh for ritual immersion, but rather than using the mikveh in nearby Roth, it was actually easier for her to travel directly. Had a happy childhood and many Christian school friends in the village. Unfortunately, her father died in 1937 due to complications from an operation when Mom was only 13 years old. 2 close Christian friends attended the funeral and were later harassed at the train station and punished due to breaking laws forbidding interaction with Jews. Then, on November 9th, 1938, the family experienced the horrors of Kristallnacht. Daily life became increasingly more difficult as the Nazi decrees against the Jews became stricter. The Lowenstein's extended family, already in the United States, were unsuccessful in helping them immigrate. On December 7th, 1941, my grandmother, Johanna, and her 4 children, Carl, 19 years old, Jenny, 18, Trudy, 17, and Friedrich, the youngest, only 16, were deported to the Riga ghetto in Latvia. In their transport were about 1,000 people, which included most of the remaining Jews of Roth and surrounding towns. Mom still vividly recalls being housed together with the Higsters in one extremely cramped room. Amazingly, my mother and her sister stayed together for 3 brutal years in various slave labor camps. They were liberated in the cold winter of 1945 in Bromberg, Poland, after a terrible death march. Jenny and Trudy were the only family members to survive the Holocaust. In the summer of 1984, I joined my parents when a memorial stone was commemorated at the Jewish cemetery in Roth. It was a bittersweet time for the survivors, on one hand to remember, and on the other hand to start keeping in contact again. I was given 2 prayer books belonging to her father. This is one that was salvaged after Kristallnacht, and it was found by Herbert Roth in the city archives. Herb's family helped establish this traveling exhibit, and his sister Helen Dittmer is here with us. Today, we still keep in contact with descendants of the Jewish families who originated in Roth. It was a U.S. Army soldier and uncle of Karen Bogitz, who helped my mother and aunt resettle upon returning to Fronhausen. The Arbeitskreis is a dedicated committee in Roth today, which has been remembering the Jewish history of the region for the past 20 years. Our family has made many close friendships, and members have helped me learn even more about the past. In 2004, the group put a beautiful plaque on the wall outside the old Lowenstein home, remembering the family. On a visit a few years ago, we walked together from Fronhausen to Roth in the footsteps of my grandfather. Last summer, I had the honor to speak at the Synagogue Roth, the place where my ancestors prayed and my uncle had his bar mitzvah. An original wooden sign advertising my grandfather's business was found last year. It was discovered in a normally inaccessible part of the house's attic while doing roofing work. For my mother, seeing photos of me holding this memento by the former butcher shop had a special meaning and sense of closure to the past which was wiped out. Finally, there is a biblical phrase imprinted on one of the synagogue walls which says, "V'ahavta l're'echa kamocha." This is part of the golden rule and means, you shall love your fellow as yourself. It was explained to me that these words, obviously prominently placed, must have had great significance to the former Jewish community, but were corrupted by the cruelty of the Nazis. Today, this expression has become part of the Arbeitskreis logo, their values and their activities, to act humanely and respectfully to everyone. So it's my pleasure now to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Miriam Zimmerman. She is professor of Holocaust